Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, Matt Mallory of Meet the Pressers. Matt, thanks for coming along for the ride today, man.
Always fun to be with you.
Not a ton of news, but we've got some news to get to today. Before we get to the news, I want to start off by saying, as I do every day, if you're catching us on Polite Society podcast feeds, either Facebook or YouTube, you can comment on the live video. We'll get your comments right away. We'll put them on the air. We'll discuss them live. If you're catching us on OpsLens or anywhere else that picks up our feed, head to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet, and we'll get those up and discuss them on the air as well. We're already getting
A lot of comments.
we're getting check-ins coming on YouTube, so very cool there.
Nice.
First story I want to talk about today is Oregon. We touched on this a little bit, Charlie Cook and I, yesterday. Oregon's got Measure 114 up on the ballot coming up this November, well, here in just a couple of weeks. And it's among other things, it doesn't mention in the story that I put in the show notes today, but among other things that it does is you have to get a license to buy a firearm, and that license requires you to go through live training, which means you have to have a firearm to get a license to buy a firearm. The other thing it does is it builds in a waiting period with the stated goal of preventing suicide. Everything I've ever seen, I don't know about you, Matt, but suicide is a real thing, and if we can help stop suicide, that's a great thing. Especially it's a problem among veterans. But
Yeah. I've had friends commit suicide in law enforcement. I've had relatives, my grandfather, my dad's father. So it runs in the family, or at least I know people and been around people. So it happens. But I think if the flip side of this is you've got somebody who's got domestic violence and they're trying to get a firearm to be able to protect themselves, and now they got to wait. And what happens in that interim, right? They end up getting attacked by the person that's causing them domestic violence, and maybe they die, or something else. The government can.
Well, and New Jersey has a case like that I keep referring to. Her name is Carol Baum. She applied not to carry, but to buy a pistol. She went through all the right steps, did all the right things. The jurisdiction she applied for the purchase permit from had 30 days. And she checked back after 30 days. We're working on it. At 42 days, her soon-to-be ex-husband walked right through the restraining order into her garage and stabbed her to death.
Yeah. Restraining orders, they really stop people.
Yes. And I honestly don't believe if somebody's has decided they're going to commit suicide, a waiting period to purchase a gun is not going to dissuade that decision.
Usually, I think statistics, when I teach the Utah course, they have it built in there that it's, I think, 10 minutes or more is usually, people that are thinking about it longer than 10 minutes, usually they're going to do it. But if somebody's thinking about it, just like, I'm just off myself, well, that usually is fleeting. It comes and goes. They're not going to get in a vehicle, go buy a gun, buy ammo. I mean, by then they're like, what the hell am I doing, right?
Right.
So it doesn't match statistics, but we know our government, though. They'll move statistics to fit their narrative.
And it's just another instance for a gun grab is really what it is.
Yep.
If they can make it more difficult, they will.
Yeah. And they're trying to use, like, who wants suicides? Who wants kids being shut up in schools? Nobody does. So what do? They go on the heartstrings. They start pulling on those heartstrings and say, oh, well, we can curb suicide. And any reasonable person that doesn't really know the statistics or know about guns, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because, of course, politicians are pandering to the ignorance of people that don't know about guns or the statistics of suicide.
Well, and honestly, I think what may be happening is the anti-gunners are pandering to the ignorance of the politicians who happen to lean
That's
their
true.
way, feed them baloney information, and the politicians, okay, that sounds good, and then charges right forward with it.
Right. Yep. For sure.
Next story I want to get to, and by the way, folks, if you want to comment on any of these topics, get on it. I'll get your comments up. The next story I wanted to talk about is, this is an interesting one out of Washington, D.C. There are, I never know how to put this, so I'm just going to put it the way that Washington Post did. D.C. won't give 3 black men concealed carry licenses. They are suing. There are 3 black men in Washington, D.C. who have applied for concealed carry permits. None of them have a criminal record. None of them have any issues that way at all. D.C. is denying their permits, one, because of domestic violence issues. He was a victim of domestic violence. And a couple for my understanding, one of them was a trying to find.
Well, the one is self-defense. He's firing the gun in self-defense in 2019, and he wasn't charged. So it's like he fired the gun in self-defense. The DA decided not to bring charges because they either thought it was justified or they put it in front of a grand jury, and the grand jury said, yeah, there's not enough there to indict. So he's innocent, and they're going to deny him because of that. I had a case locally like that with one of my students who the judge denied the person because they had too many domestic violence calls at their home. But it was not against them. It was against their significant other. And the judge denied the person.
Yeah, and these are really baloney reasons for any. Yeah. Is there racism in the Washington D.C. Police Department? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I think they're just denying everybody they can possibly deny for any reason they can come up with. And these 3 guys decided, we're going to sue over it. I hope they win.
Same.
I don't care the reason they win. I just hope they win.
We have here, I just actually was on the phone with one of my students the other day, or actually earlier today. He told me the other day that Wayne County, New York, isn't issuing pistol licenses at all. They put everything on hold because they want to wait until after the election because the judges are going to make new decisions when the new judges come in. Like, what? No. So I referred him over to the GOA attorney and said, this might be another lawsuit you want to take, like sue Wayne County for not doing what they're supposed to do. You can't pause the Second Amendment just because it's convenient for you. No, do your job, process. If you're going to make it a requirement, then go through the process. You need to fulfill your side of it and do the process for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get some, because the comments are coming in quickly here. Let me get a few of them in. Smeggy says, ask an anti if they would exclude people who already have a gun from the waiting period. If it was just about cool-down period, then it does nothing if the person already has one. That's a great point.
Very, yeah. So they're basically alluding to the fact that, okay, well, if you're going to buy a gun, everybody has a waiting period. Well, if they already have a gun, then they're going to commit suicide or do something illegal with it. This doesn't affect it because they can just use the gun they have. That's yes. A great point. Spot on.
Absolutely a great point. And Big John says, going to the suicides, Japan does not have guns, but plenty of suicides because they jump in front of subways and trains. Well, and suicide is a lot more culturally prevalent in Japan than it is in the United States.
Yeah, suicide bombers or suicide. What am I trying to say? The planes in World War II and
kamikaze, yeah,
where they just crash it and they kill themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess they got to start banning subways and trains over there in Japan.
Yes. And tall buildings. I can fall off a tall building in a single bound.
And water, because if people drown themselves, they commit suicide by drowning. He's got to ban all the water.
Going to the permit story, Robert over on the YouTube side says, according to Anthony Calandro, it's classism. I've got my permit. I work for the police department. I can carry. Yeah, you don't. You're not going to.
You know, it's interesting. I love Anthony too at Gun for Hire. I'll make the joke to people that I became a cop just so I could have the illegal things you peasants can't have. Now, obviously, I'm saying that jokingly because
Right.
that's not why I got into law enforcement. But in some sense, that is classism. Like you're not going to get a ticket for speeding. You're not going to, you can carry places legally that other people can't carry, even nationally under LEOSA, which I think is crap. I'd rather have good armed citizens, and trust me, I know a lot of good armed citizens that are better shots than law enforcement. A lot of them. So I'd rather have them out there armed all around the country, stopping bad guys, making good decisions, than some of the law enforcement. And there's a lot of law enforcement that don't carry off duty because they just don't want that responsibility. And then they say, well, I wasn't armed. I couldn't stop the bad guy. So I'm just going to not do anything.
I had thought, I'm not certain about Sioux Falls Police Department, but I thought it was, this just may be Hollywood entering my brain where it shouldn't, and I've got to purge that out. I thought most law enforcement jobs required you to carry when you were off duty.
All depends on the agency, SOP. Some will actually, like DPS here in Syracuse University, they're not even allowed to bring their guns home. They have to lock their guns up before they leave to go home for the night. They don't even let them take their guns off property.
Wow.
So totally specific based on what agency you work for and what they expect you to do off the job.
Wow. And we're now, I'm gonna move on to the next story. We're going to open a can of worms with this one. This story broke today. I'm going to read just a little bit off of CNN. The AR-15 style rifle used in the deadly St. Louis school shooting had been taken from the shooter's possession during an interaction with police about a week before the attack. It's unclear how he got it back, police say. The gunman, and I'm not going to name him, although CNN does, opened fire on Monday, killing. He killed 2, injured a bunch more. Before the shooting, his family contacted St. Louis police to have a firearm taken away from him. St. Louis Police Commissioner Michael Sachs said at a news conference Wednesday. The mother at the time wanted it out of the house, he added. Police responded to a domestic disturbance at the family's home on October 15th, just 9 days before Monday's shooting, according to a Wednesday night police statement. I'm going to go ahead and summarize from here. That specific rifle that he used was taken away from him. Somehow, in the 9 days, he got that rifle back. It wasn't a red flag where the police got custody of it. My understanding is another person,
family members,
who was allowed to, who was a clean person, was allowed to take possession of the rifle. Somehow he got it back and was able to go do the shooting. At least up until the point he got it back, without a red flag law, the system worked. Mom recognized something's wrong. My son shouldn't have a gun, and I don't want this gun in my house.
Right.
Up to that point, it worked. There was a lapse of judgment, and whoever took possession of that firearm to give it back. So,
and really, I mean, that's how it should be. It should be, like in the olden days where it's like, hey, this person's not, he's going through a rough spell, or this person's not right. We probably shouldn't have any guns around or near this individual so they don't do something to themselves or to other people. And I mean, that's ideal. That's what we, that's what we teach with Hold My Guns and Walk the Talk America, etc., is to try to drive that home where let's, as a community, a firearms community, help each other out versus letting the government get involved. Because we know if the government gets involved, then who knows? They'll do whatever they want, and good luck getting your guns back, ever.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm always accused of oversharing, but my own story is the one I know the most. When I had my stroke, in April of 2021. I have been a concealed carry advocate and a carry advocate for a long time. Immediately after my stroke, I did not carry for several months until I went through a MAG 40 class again as a student and was evaluated by Masada Ayub. I made my own decision not to go armed in public until I knew I was safe. And where this ties into what we're talking about, I think, is this. The mom made the decision, look, this isn't right. Susan could have made that decision for me. The government shouldn't have to step in. The government should have no place stepping in.
So true. Yeah, I just had an officer that works for me in the town where I'm the chief of. He just got back to me yesterday and said, "Hey, I've been released. Here's my doctor's letter." He had a stroke-like symptoms. It wasn't a stroke, but it was pretty darn close, he said. And he was out for a couple months, and he said he resigned one of his other jobs. He didn't resign working for us in the town, but it was, he called me, or he sent me the email. I called him up. I said, "Hey, you want to work tonight?" He's like, "What?" "Hey, dude, you're back to work." He's probably sitting there twiddling his thumbs going, "I'm freaking antsy." So I gave him my shift and let him go to work and work. So he knew, he wasn't sure he was going to be able to recover, and he resigned the other job with the sheriff's department, and he ended up having to reapply for that job because now he's back to full duty, and he sounded just as good as he was before he went out. So we got to kind of police our own, if you will, and know. And so commending you for making the decision, like, listen, I'm not in the right state to be able to carry at this point until you get back to where you were prior or close.
Yeah. And just I'm still not today as I sit here was over a year later. I'm not where I was before my stroke. I'm not far away, but
right.
I'm doing okay, and I feel absolutely confident in my ability to safely carry and do so in public. So, but
none of us are, right, Paul? None of us are. We all, like, my eyes are failing as I get older, so we all go through things over time. My eyes fail, so what do? I'm working on red dots now. So we find ways to overcome and adapt to still be safe and be able to, wield that firearm in a safe, efficient fashion. So, it's we all have bumps in the road.
Well, and I think another thing, and this is a great thing to talk to you about as a trainer, self-evaluation, and it's something I think we should all do on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Where are you with your skills? What are you confident in your ability to do? And has it changed in the past year?
Over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's spot on. And that's the whole thing with an instructor going and taking training from other instructors like Masada Ayub. Clint and I are hosting him at the beginning of November, so I'm going to be in PA at Clint's, and we're going to take the Deadly Force instructor training from him for that week. Right? There's things I'm going to learn from Mas. I'm looking forward to it, and if anything, it's brushing off the cobwebs. Any instructor you go to, if they're not constantly keeping up with their training and going to other instructors to just see if they can even present it a different way, if they're just stagnant and just teaching classes and that's all they do and they don't look to improve themselves, maybe they've, peaked. Maybe it's time to move on to a different instructor, because there's always different ways to say it, do it, and not to mention it's perishable for even us instructors. So you can't just say, "I've arrived, I know everything." That's bull. Nobody knows that. Masada Ayub, Tom Gibbons, they all take training from each other and other instructors just to keep fresh.
It's been, 3 years ago now, but I took a class where Masada Ayub was a student in the class. He was a student with me. It was the active shooter interdiction course at the Firearms Academy of Seattle. And that was a blast. And eye-opening to see Mas as a student. Awesome experience.
Cool.
I want to go on to our next story here. This one off of MSN.com. Redwood City, I'm just going to paraphrase this whole thing. Redwood City, California has banned the sale of firearms within city limits. Two stores wanted to open, and in a 5-2 vote this week, the city council denied both. What am I trying to say?
Both applications.
Yes, to open in the city, and so it looks like there's going to be a lawsuit in the very near future, as there should be. They're saying, well, they're too close to schools. Well, you can't sell a firearm to somebody that's under the age of 18, period. In California, right. I think the age is 21. Do they sell cars within a certain distance of these
right.
schools? Yeah. Because you have to be at least 16 to get a learner's permit, at least here in South Dakota.
Or alcohol, or marijuana, cannabis shops. I mean, some places ban how close they can be to schools, but yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, there's no gun stores in the entire town. That, you know, I maybe possibly could say if there's 5 or 6 already in the city and it's small, and they're like, well, we don't need any more. We really don't want to saturate the area with gun stores. Okay, I guess I could kind of understand that if they're applying that same matrix against other businesses in the area. Like, we don't want no more than 5 liquor stores in the town, or, you know, no more than 5 on this side of town or that side, or whatever, something like that. But there's none, and they don't want any. I don't know. That does sound like a lawsuit they might be able to win, because they're discriminating against the Second Amendment right.
I want to get one quote off this story. This is from one of the people that was trying to open a gun store. Quote, "You guys approve liquor licenses left and right with no problem, even though they're located within 1,000 feet of a school. Same thing goes with cannabis. You have no problem proving this, but when it comes to guns, we are protected by the Second Amendment, and what you're trying to do is actively inviting a lot of litigation about this, because this is going to be a national case. This is a big deal, and we're not going to let it go."
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. They're bringing litigation. Why? Just because the views of these town board members are like, yeah, well, we don't really want guns in our schools, or whatever, some hogwash that they're doing, and they're going to spend and waste taxpayers' money in that town or city or wherever it is, trying to litigate it, trying to fight it.
Get some comments in here. Speaking of instructors, Neil Widener checking in.
Hey, good old Neil.
On the story we were just talking about, George Geller. Oh, good. No more crime in Redwood City. Yeah, because the criminals can't buy guns.
They're going to go and swipe it. Oh, wait, you can't do that anymore because all the credit card companies are now monitoring that, right?
Yeah, and then another good one from gun websites. They want to push guns into the same realm as vices, like booze, drugs, etc., moving the Overton window. Actually, they're pushing it farther, because like this, the quote from the story, they're approving liquor licenses within 1,000 feet of schools. They're approving cannabis stores within 1,000 feet of schools.
And if you look at New York, right, they're putting up casinos all across the state. I think they've got 2 more locations that I just heard that they've got locations scheduled for more places of gamble. And there's even a bill that I haven't researched it much, but I've heard that there's a bill saying they're going to allow prostitution, legal prostitution, because the state can tax it if it's legal. So yeah, it's fine for them to do all these things that are like morally, apprehensible and not good, but yet Second Amendment right for firearms to defend yourself. No, we don't want to do that, because then they might actually be an uprising against all the stupid illegal stuff that we're making legal. That really is, it's that whole biblical mindset of what is right is wrong and what is wrong is right. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, it's crazy. Looney Town.
There you go. One more story I want to talk about today. This one off of MSN.com. I get all my news from these wonderful conservative websites. More than 100 members of Congress signed a letter to President Biden calling for him to crack down on homemade ghost guns. Wow. Matt, this is a made-up problem, and specifically, it started being a made-up problem with the Los Angeles Police Department when they started calling any gun that somebody scratched the serial number off of a ghost gun, equating that to a homemade firearm, and the press grabbed a hold of it and blew it up. And now
they'll blur the lines on it.
Yeah.
They blur the lines between the two. It's like, okay, why would somebody scratch a serial number off? First off, why do guns need serial numbers anyways? Because, as far as tracing them and stuff, that's something NFA, that's something with it recently. And honestly, I think if that goes to the Supreme Court, which I've heard there's a couple lawsuits about it, if that goes to the Supreme Court, along with NFA, Volato, suppressed guns, that gets to the Supreme Court, and they apply the Bruen decision to that as far as how it was back in the day, I think all that stuff's going to go away. But if it gets to the Supreme Court, I got a pretty good feeling they're going to say, nah, get rid of the NFA, get rid of all this stuff because that's, serial numbers. What? No. I mean, we're wishful thinking, I guess, with us pro-Second Amendment individuals, right?
From your lips to St. Clarence Thomas's ears. I mean, yeah, I certainly hope so. I'm sure you've read the Bruen decision like I have. Yeah, there were no serial numbers on firearms in 1791. All firearms were not all. The vast majority of firearms were homemade in 1791.
Right. Handcrafted, yeah, exactly.
Well, if they weren't homemade, they were individually hand assembled, and so yeah. This is and I don't know why these legislators are writing Biden. He is their poster child. He is going after this way beyond what any other president ever has.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely wreaking havoc. He's like a bull in a china shop, and the China is our Second Amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming down to the bottom of the hour, man. What do you want to plug today? Training, Meet the Pressers, anything?
Yeah, definitely. Meet the Pressers, meetthepressers.com. Check it out. Check out all the interviews we've had. Charlie and I have been doing the live, so we're looking at the best of, where we're taking individuals that have been on both of our shows and bringing them on to interview. PSNed.com. I just recently got certified as a Taser Master Instructor, so anybody out there that wants to get certified as a Taser instructor, still doing the Saber. We just updated the PowerPoint for Saber. I helped them redesign that, so we've got new curriculum. Anybody who's a Saber pepper spray instructor, civilian pepper spray instructor, then definitely check that out. And then I'm still traveling, doing UTM, NRA, and USCCA instructor courses, so anybody want to book me for any of that, I will travel. And then obviously in New York, I'm doing the 18-hour and doing a lot of training locally and closing the farm down for winter. So anyway, check it out, meetthepressers.com, and you can find out all about me and all the things I'm doing.
So what you're hoping to do is get a southern state swing and travel in the warm states through the winter, right?
Yeah. My wife would love that. She's like, let's go to Florida in December. I'm like, all right, let me see if I can book it.
All right. Well, hey, man, thank you again. For everybody watching, please come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is Training Friday. We've got a treat. I mentioned the Firearms Academy of Seattle earlier in the broadcast. We've got my brain. Oh, my God. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We got Marty Hayes joining us tomorrow, the former owner of the Firearms Academy of Seattle. He sold it to Belle McCormick, and I'm going to try to get her on in the future too. But Marty Hayes is going to be joining us on Training Friday tomorrow. We're going to be talking about how's training changed from the early 1980s through now. That's going to be an interesting conversation, I think. That's 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. Please come join us then. Until then, everybody, thanks for